Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Beware your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Did you hear that?
I could hear it. I don't know if I could handle it, though. Those are two different things.
I'm wearing fancier headphones than normal because I've been very afraid of my technology lately. Last week we didn't have a show because my technology just up and died, and we were going to have Holly Pickering on, who was going to be on last week. But she's sick, so I asked you at the last minute to be on, and you showed up. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, no problem. I'm very excited.
Are you? That's so
really
nice.
I am. I mean, I've watched this before, so it was a big thing for me.
It's funny and sweet that the show, which is not particularly well produced or good, even there's so few shows like it that it stands out, and people have been so nice to me saying thank you for making a show about people who make video games, because not a lot of people do it. So now you're on it, and you made a video game called Demon Chic, didn't you?
I did. That is a thing. That is the big thing I did for the past couple years.
Couple years. Is that the first game that you've put out commercially?
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be a couple years, but it ended up taking a couple years.
Interesting. Well, I want to start from the start. Are you a young man? You seem like a young man.
I am. I probably look little, too. I always feel like I look very young. I get carded a lot for, like, renting video games. But I'm, like, 23. 23 is my age.
That is a good age. That's the age
It's a fine age.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's 13 years younger than me. So you were, like, 5 when Space Jam came out.
I actually made my dad take me. Yeah.
How did you make him?
I had to go. Like, I told him. I was like, can I go to this movie? And he... Okay, so there was very little arm twisting, but he hated the movie. So I think that's where I put in the, like, feeling of forcibleness.
Oh, sure. I can't stand Space Jam. It's a deformed divorce. It feels like Bugs Bunny is getting a divorce from me when I watch that. Like I
don't remember any of it. Like, it's just gone for me. Because, like, I didn't understand it at the time. It was sort of like an anthropological expedition. It was like, I wasn't really, like, a very popular child. So Space Jam was part of, like the same reason I subscribed to Sports Illustrated. It was like, this is what everyone talks about, and I'm going to be in the club. I'm going to know about it.
But did you sincerely want to be in the club, or did you just think, I better know about this club? Because these people,
I really did, but it didn't pay off. Like, when I became friends with them, like, they stole my bicycle. They were not nice kids.
The Sports Illustrated Space Jam crowd.
Yeah. So it's really, like, that was my lesson, and, like, if people don't like you for who you are, they'll steal your bicycle, so watch out.
I have learned that lesson, too. Not with bicycles, but with just being mocked terribly by people. I was hoping... good. No, it felt bad at the time. But now I've learned that when jerks are mean to you, it's like when Skeletor is mean to He-Man. It's a good sign that He-Man is probably doing something right, or else Skeletor wouldn't be so upset. He's not that upset with Beastman or Merman. Wait a minute. You're 13 years younger than me, so do you know who these guys are?
I wouldn't have been allowed to watch that. That would have been too violent. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, I couldn't watch really Power Rangers very much, like, only at friends' houses.
How about cereals? How about sugary cereals? Did you get to eat those?
I loved sugary cereals. I was all about that. Those are great.
But no Power Rangers.
I mean, I desperately loved Power Rangers. That was something that was, like, popular, but I loved and thought was cool. I was a Power Ranger for Halloween again and again, but I didn't know what they did. I didn't know anything about them, just, like, the characters. Like,
yeah, there's a certain iconic charm to them that just captures your imagination, regardless if you've ever even seen the show. In fact, if you have seen the show, you might not like it anymore after that, because there's a lot of live-action parts with just a fat guy, skinny guy comedy routine and just good-looking people talking about small problems. Yeah. But anyway, we've barely talked about you in the game making. You started Demon Chic a few years ago. And that was the first commercial game you released.
Yeah.
Is that right? What got you wanting to make this game at all in the first place at, I assume, around the age of 20?
basically, I was about to graduate college. I had no idea what to do. I was really worried about that. And I was going to do like the really self-destructive, I don't know how to make money, so I'm just going to go to grad school if I can decision and just kind of hide there.
Mm.
But then my mom's company, which had just released their first game separately, they they were like, we really want to transition full time into games because they were an educational software company.
Mhm.
So they decided they really wanted to commit to games because that was more where the money was on iOS. They were a Palm company before, and Palm, there was a big educational market selling to schools, but schools don't really have iPhones, so they were going to switch over, but none of them really knew anything about games. So I'm saying none of them because I view the company as a separate entity, but at that point, it was really just my mom. So it was just my mom. She wanted to make games. Her first game, like, didn't really do that well just because she didn't really know anything about the gaming scene or really where she was going. It was more like her getting a feel for things, and then she was sort of like, you do everything but the programming, I'll do the programming. And then I ended up having some friends help with some parts, but that was generally how it went.
So your mom is a programmer?
Yeah.
That's
Like,
pretty amazing. And she has her own company. Prior to that, did she work for other big companies, coding stuff?
she did. She's gonna get so mad at me. I don't really know that much about it. I know she was probably at Nortel at one point, but that might not have been true. That might have just been my dad. I don't know. I know they worked together, but I'm not sure exactly which company.
Huh. And she grew up enjoying video games, or just grew up with programming, or both?
She just started programming in college. That was
Huh.
when she switched over. She'd never really done it beforehand, and she doesn't really play conventionally. Like, she wouldn't be viewed as a gamer, but she loves Plants vs. Zombies. That's her big thing. And
Yeah,
I've
that's a
sort
great
of introduced her to other video games, and she is very picky about what she does or doesn't play, but she's now done Final Fantasy VII and Pokemon. Those were her two gamer games.
Do you know which Pokemon? I'm very curious if she's
It was
like
actually Pokemon Blue,
Oh, really?
the oldest. But it was I didn't want to give her my DS because that was what I was playing. So I was really cheap. I gave her my old Game Boy Color. I was like, they're almost the same. Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So she wanted to make games because, in part, she thought, well, this is what a programmer can do to make money. And you were like, I'll help you make a game, Mom. It'll be about two guys and a ambiguously gendered person living in a house. And they fight a man on top of a piano with letters, and sometimes the monster police show up, and there's snowman monsters and a multi-headed dinosaur in the living room. And she was like,
know a lot about this.
I do. I know quite a bit about your game. And your mom said, profit deal. Yes. This is gonna make us rich.
I think she just wasn't really sure about what kind of game would or wouldn't succeed, and just had, I guess, sort of ideally not a misplaced trust, but we don't know yet in me. So I think since the game came out, she's been very happy with what we ended up making. She's played our game, and she enjoys it and likes it. So that makes me feel good. But a lot of the time, like along the way, she would sort of not really know what we were making, and she would keep telling me, like, this better not be really offensive and, like, awful. And she was a little worried that some parts of it would be too scary, so we were going to, like, block out certain art assets during development and then swap them in right at the last minute. But then we ended up being lazy, so we used all the real art the whole time.
So the stuff that you were afraid might scare her, you never even swapped it out. You just left it in and hoped for the best.
Well, we showed it to her first. We were like, this is what the art looks like. How do you feel? And she was like, we might want to swap it out, but then we just never did. And she was like, we don't have to anymore. Like, I've seen it. Yeah. I felt really guilty, though.
Really? You are her creation. She made you, and then you made this thing. So it's like her grandson, almost, this game you made.
But also her son.
Yes, and hers, too. Whoa. Woof. That's another video game right there.
Oh, my goodness.
A son and mother making their own electronic spawn. Pretty intense. And has the game pleased her in terms of sales? Has it been a success?
we're more like hopeful for the future. Like it hasn't come close to being profitable yet, because we spent 2 years on that. That probably wasn't like a great idea, and we didn't plan it that way. But I think we're more because we have sort of tentative funding for our next project, at least. Like we're not immediately about to go out of business. Because of that, we're more hopeful for how it'll help us in the future. And kind of, I think the biggest thing stopping our sales that we've noticed as a problem is people being like, that looks really cool, but it's only on iPad. So I think also the fact that we're porting, hopefully that'll open up more. Yeah, she was just really happy that so far no one's hated us. Like all the reviewers, it's like whenever any of the reviewers so far have said something they disliked about it, we're like, fair enough, that's what we would have picked. Like if someone had to put like, what do you think is your worst quality? Like, so that like she was really happy. No one really was unhappy. They were all pretty positive. So
yeah, the people that do play it all seem to really enjoy it, and rightfully so. But we should probably tell them what it is. I described it a little bit, but straight from the source. Tell us about Demon Chic. What is it? How's it play?
It sort of takes the structure of a JRPG, but it's kind of playing off of the structure of a JRPG, so it's kind of using it as a more of like a construction or a formal trope than really actually being a JRPG. The actual battles, they started out trying to make like a really intense strategic action RPG battle system, but we found out like the battle system we'd created, for it to be pushed to create interesting problems where you sort of had to balance and make cool decisions on a quick basis, you always had to be seconds from death. And we could balance it that way, and it was awesome, but it was also like the most intense thing, and that was just not really what we were trying to do or get across. So we just ended up making it a lot easier, and then we ran into tech problems. So we had to cut all of these features in the battle system, and immediately like half of it was missing. So at that point, we had to sort of look at what we could and couldn't do and the art assets we had, and then redesign the battle system. And in the process of doing so, we ended up finding one that was actually a lot more symbolically resonant with what's going on with the characters' lives and how the battle system actually reflects their lives. So we sort of went into it thinking it would be kind of like taking an old Final Fantasy game where it's story, battle, and just playing on that by changing the subject matter, the time period, the setting, and then also the pacing, making it switch back and forth a lot faster. But in the end, the way the battle system ended up panning out, it was a lot more kind of an interactive story experience where you're sort of like in Final Fantasy VII, where you're not changing the story, but you fighting the battles gives you some of that feeling. So for me, it's sort of like I really feel like if you're into games for just like the gaming, like the being in the zone moment, like playing a Bit Trip game or Tetris or something, like this really might not be a game for you. Like it's not really a rule-based, systematic, like that's not where the tension or excitement sort of comes from for me. It's sort of, I feel very happy that we made like a 3-hour interactive art experience thing that I feel like I would enjoy sitting and poking around, and like it entertains me. But as far as a game, it's kind of more of like an interactive thingy.
But there are battles, for certain, and an interesting system filled with letters on screen.
But they're sort of a trick. The battles are kind of a ruse. I don't know how like spoilery do we get on the show. I don't know if we should avoid spoilers.
Well, if I were you, I would think, what? I want people to try out the thing I made, not just for the money, but because I made it. So I would be like, how am I going to entice them?
That's a good strategic. Yeah, that's some good advice.
So what could you say about the battle system that would pique an interest, but also, like you did with Final Fantasy, make people feel like, oh, that reminds me of something I like already, so I might like it.
So we wanted to make the battle system feel interesting and different and also empowering. So I really like the idea that you're sort of scanning this mess of floating letters, and you use your different spells by pulling out the letters you need to spell words, and then they activate. And once they activate, we wanted to have that moment where just all these crazy voices start screaming in the soundtrack, and you drag your finger around and everything just starts burning, and you're like, ah, I'm a god of the flame. Like that was kind of the feel that we found the most fun when we first made it, and we really decided to hone in and focus on that.
Yeah, people might not know from a lot of the trailers, which look very story-based. They look very surreal and
Yeah,
expressive with a hand-drawn look. But you spell ice and kill with ice, just like you
yeah,
like in all your favorite JRPGs. You like ice
yeah,
spells?
yeah.
This game's got them. It's got some
Mhm.
pretty good ice spells, actually, by spelling ice,
The
which
the
is
ice
what...
spell is like my favorite spell effect. It came out really pretty. I didn't make any of the spell effects. I feel like I can say that. Like,
And what did you do on the game? What
um,
things did you work on?
it sort of has like the two art styles. So one of them is kind of a hodgepodge because it's by me, who's the less. I didn't major in art. But the other style is done by way more professional, awesome people that we had work with us, who are my friends Julie Chan, Marika Cohen, and Elizabeth Gerolds. They're all really cool. Their names are in the credits. I just feel like I have to give them props all the time because they're awesome. But they did the battle art and all of that because I, like, starting out, I had no idea about game development. I was like, how do you even make an animation? To me, I was like, this is crazy. This is sorcery. So, like, they actually, I feel like I couldn't have made my art for my half without seeing how they did their half. Where I was like, oh, you save it as a sequence of frames, as this type of file, and all of that. So I sort of really cribbed off what they were doing.
Huh, good
And then,
technique.
yeah, yeah. So then I did the other half of the art. And then the music is similarly half one of my friends, half by me. All of the, like, really heavy metal, really deep, doomy music is my friend's various bands from his life. He was so nice and let us use them. And then the other half that's all weird and sounds very cheaply recorded was all me and my other friends. So.
How did you feel taking on so much of this on your own, it being your first game and also delving into stuff that was very new to you in terms of both art design and music design and also game design? That must have been a huge undertaking.
I felt probably more confident than I should. Like, there was definitely a period where I read all the articles on making your first game to try to, like, I was like, I'm going to go in prepared. I'm going to be the guy that read the fact before playing the game. And then, like, there were all of these tips where I was like, this article is clearly not written for me. Like, this is written for, like, really stupid people that don't know what they're doing. Like, one of them is, like, don't scope too big. Like, you're always going to have to cut. I was like, bah, humbug. And then every single one of those we ended up encountering. Like, we initially, each of the three main characters, like, it's kind of strange that you just switch between which character you're fighting as. And, like, I was fine with that, because at the end of the day, I was like, this game is strange. That works. But initially, they each had their own totally different battle system. Like, one guy's was kind of like a Bimani type game. And that was just, we were like, that's very ambitious. That would have been like a 6-year game. So we decided to sort of, one battle system's enough. Like, yeah.
But at one point it was going to be there was going to be rhythm action in there. That would have been
The
great.
other two were both rhythm based. Yeah.
Ah,
But
cool.
Our next game will be rhythm. So for
The
part
next
of
game is
yeah.
really very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about that soon. What games influenced you to make Demon Chic the way you did? Was there any games that kind of showed you that this is a path that you wanted to go down, that you wanted to emulate?
I didn't really play very adventurous games for most of my life because as a kid, I didn't really play a lot. I wasn't very loud. Then sort of the floodgates opened in high school and then especially college. And I initially stuck to all the big budget mainstream. Like, I was the biggest Call of Duty person going into this. But then, like, right around the time I was writing the script, I started frantically trying to play what sounded interesting to me. And I suddenly discovered all of these awesome, crazy games. And I was initially going to make a much more conventional first game. It was going to be like a post-apocalyptic, dark, angry people fighting with guns. But then, like, literally after 3 weeks of getting ready to write that script, and like 1 week before I graduated and had to start writing, I all of a sudden was like, Suda51 exists, and Choaniki exists, and then played all of these really vibrant and crazy games. And like, people for years had told me about Katamari Damacy, and I'd never actually tried it. Like, so then all of a sudden I was like, I want to make a game that just, like, people turn it on and they're like, rainbows. But then it sort of became like weird rainbows and zombies. Ugh, but like, there's hopefully some charm.
That is such an amazing process to hear that you were, because you subscribe to Sports Illustrated, and I think of Call of Duty as kind of the Sports Illustrated of the gaming world.
Oh, I don't anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
but at the time you did. At the time you really got
mhm,
what they were selling with Call of Duty. You
mhm,
felt
mhm.
you felt the Call of Duty feeling. And then all of a sudden you had kind of a metamorphosis. What do you think brought that on? Was it the being on the cusp of about to join the creative field of game development, and you suddenly had like an epiphany about what you wanted games to be, or what do you think happened?
I think it was just I still like love Call of Duty and all of that. Like I those games are still great, but I think it was just never having had access to those.
Mm.
Finally trying them for the first time. Like it really I think would have happened inevitably. It just happened at the time it did. I think by chance, but it was awesome. Because if it had happened like a month later and I was already committed to something really sad, like that would have been a downer for the
Oh.
next 2 years. Yeah.
Do you think you would have how do you think that game would have turned out if you hadn't had these new influences kind of jump in at the last second? How do you think your post-apocalyptic sad time game would have been?
I think it would have been fine, but I don't think it would have brought really anything new to the table. Like our main goal for that was to really do the BioWare style choices where you have like some say in how a side quest plays out amongst a few different branches. And then but we were just going to make it like a world of suffering where everything you choose makes you feel guilty, and it's all staggered by several hours. So like you don't find out until hours later that the orphan boy you adopted is a drug addict who's stealing all of your food. Like, and then at that point you either have to sell him or keep him, and either way he gets sick and dies. Like, so like I feel like on some weird level with like choice narratives, I always really like when there's sort of not a win-lose very clear dichotomy. But I feel like having a game where every choice is just really, really cruel, like it serves a purpose, and I would probably play it, but like it's sort of like it doesn't really bring, I think, something as new to the table as Demon Chic ended up hopefully trying to do.
Well, if you had, this is just off the top of my head, but if you had put your rhythm action gameplay into your every choice is terrible combo, and you're like making the player feel happy and dancy, and then all of a sudden, oh, the orphan boy choked on the dog food that he stole from you and died, and then you got to dance to like get his corpse buried. That would be a interesting juxtaposition.
I feel like this is gonna sound like I'm stealing this or like piggybacking, but that's like totally the next game we're making. It's like gonna be like 85% Walking Dead, and then like 15% like XCOM is a rhythm game. Like, it's about the beat and the bass. Like.
And that's we're just meeting each other for the first time, and I'm taken aback. I'm almost at a loss for words, which is really something for me. That you would think, well, this is my money, this is my life, this is my mom's money, this is my life. I'm going to take these astounding risks with these interesting ideas, and hope that we get to eat food next year after the game comes out. That's bold. Tell me about your boldness, or is it not that bold? Is this just what you think will in fact help you to become a profitable businessman and game developer?
I hope that on the quality of our games eventually, like we'll develop an audience and it won't be a crazy risk thing. But as it is now, I don't necessarily feel like it's particularly a bold choice, because first off, like none of it's my money. It really is just my parents' money. And I feel so guilty about that all the time. Like I really feel like after Demon Chic came out and didn't immediately sell hundreds of thousands of copies, it's like I feel like I was very gutted, because I'm like, what am I doing to my family? Whereas my parents saw the initial reaction from the first journalist to play it, and they were very happy. They were like, this can pay off. For me, I was like, oh, I'm ruining their lives. Like, so I really didn't worry about that, because I think I had a crazy view of our chances of success. But then all of a sudden, I started worrying about it all at once. But I think looking at sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think looking at how our publicity and press stuff, which is always so stressful, has happened after Demon Chic came out, is sort of like nobody knows who we are. We don't have a budget to actually conventionally advertise with money at all. So it's sort of like if our game was awful or if our game was great, no one knows until they play it. And I feel like people are just way more likely to give something by someone they don't know a try if it's a little stranger. So like if we were really cynical, that could sort of be like, make a crazy game where Jesus just farts frogs for days. Like, people will check it out on that alone. But, like, at the same time, it's hopefully we're not doing that as, like, a gimmick thing. Hopefully we're actually using that as a window to be more creative and expressive. But at the same time, like, not every famous journalist we emailed immediately answered and was like, let me try your game. Like, but at the same time, like, probably none of them would have answered if we were like, our game is about Space Marines and we don't have money. Like,
or worse, I mean, we get a lot of emails to Destructoid, just like, try our match 3 puzzle game. It's got crystals, and we're like, no offense, I'm sure your game is very good, but there's no potential that any of our readers would be at all interested in reading that. We kind of have to service them. Whereas when I wrote about your game, I felt immediately like I was doing our readers a good service to show them something that they'd never seen before, and was also made. Yeah, we should talk a little bit more about the story of Demon Chic.
Okay.
Before I forget, it is about 3 young people. They seemed young to me anyway. There's a husky one. There's a skinnier one. 2 of them are brownish. One of them is Caucasian. One of them wears a dress. But they all have beards? No.
I think one of them doesn't. I don't really know, because one of them, his facial hair, like, it would change from scene to scene as different people drew him. And then I sort of had to go through in Photoshop and, like, fix his facial hair in different scenes. Like, he was the one that actually, he was the only one that noticed. Like, I was showing him the art thinking he'd be all impressed like usual, and he was like, where's my beard? Like,
showing it to the character, the person it was based on? Are they based on real people?
Yeah, because we rotoscoped the very detailed sketch art. So I sort of picked those people and then drew them, but not rotoscoped. And they look like goblins. Like, I'm one of those people where if I'm freehand sketching, I get all the detail and just none of the topography. It's like all like, whoop, it's crazy. It looks like after you put someone through some filter. So like, they looked at these goblin drawings, because I hadn't figured out how to rotoscope yet, and then they made the cartoony versions, and like, just by freak miracle of chance, got really close to the real people. And then I later rotoscoped the real people in great detail and then showed it to them, and they were happy, and then I could trace, so it was all fine. But
how did you choose the people? Were they people you're friends with, or?
Yeah, just people I was friends with that were cool with their faces being associated with this.
And what made you choose to want to rotoscope and base it on real human beings?
Initially, I thought I would have to do all the art and all the music before my friends offered to help out. So as far as doing the art, like, I had no idea what to do. I'd never made any art that looked like what went in the game. So I sort of figured it out as I went along. I was like, this looks neat, I'll keep doing this. But that was really like a very happy day for me, because going into that, I had no idea how it would look. I'd never really tried that. So I was really pleased, but there was no planning.
That's such a, it sounds, I'm just scared. I'm scared thinking about it, thinking about my mom's money, my name, my work. I don't know how to do this yet. And then, but through some sort of, I don't know, magic and good faith, it's like a Cinderella story almost, except you haven't quite married the prince yet.
But it's not like it's not a brave decision though, because at the same time, it's like that's the one choice, and the alternative is like either go to grad school or try to find a job, and like the option is someone will pay to make you a video game of your ideas. Like, everyone would choose that. So.
Well, you'd be surprised. I do think that the difference between the brave choice and the cowardly choice isn't so much how much strength you have, but where your strengths lie. Like, if you are terrified of tigers, but you love dogs, then you're going to be a dog owner. But some people are the other way around, and they own tigers, and people are looking at them like, you're nuts, that tiger's going to kill you. But they're like, you're nuts, you got a dog. And I feel like you've got a tiger. Like, I would have been terrified. I probably couldn't have handled it. Yeah.
On the opposite hand of where your strengths lie, it's where your weaknesses lie. And like, I think the biggest weakness for me is self-discipline to do something that I don't really find interesting. So if I were to get a job where I wasn't doing something creative all the time, and like half my internships were creative and the other half were like my student jobs that weren't, I'm not doing something creative at that moment, then like I instantly just start trying to find out how to like avoid work as much as possible while I'm there and make it look like I'm working. And
That becomes the creative exercise for you. Is
yeah,
to, like,
but it's not like satisfying to go home after spending 8 hours like secretly watching YouTube videos. Like, so
it's not. It's true. But some people would go for that because it would be less scary. And they also some people take a certain satisfaction in bucking the system and watching YouTube instead of actually doing a job. But it sounds like you wanted to make the most of an opportunity and believed in yourself, at least to some degree, that you could pull it off. And I'm really glad that you did. But the story. Oh, no, anytime.
yeah, story.
But the story. Tell us about what you came up with, because not only did you design the game, not only did you do the art and the music, but you had to write a narrative, and it's unlike other narratives. Was there any narrative that in particular influenced you on it, or where did this come from? This Demon Chic.
My major in college that I was just finishing up right before starting Demon Chic was fiction writing. So I just had to write either like 4 short stories or a novella. So I ended up picking the novella just so I'd have to come up with less ideas. The short story, like you really need like an idea for a thing to happen. Like that's so intimidating. So for my novella that I had to write for class, I ended up just sort of writing about a bunch of people who were like college age and broke, just hanging out and talking and doing drugs and being dumb kids, and like everyone writes about that in fiction classes. So people were very infuriated. And it was also a really, really sad book, because like a lot of the characters in Demon Chic have a lot of very depressing problems going on in their lives. And a lot of them are just things that either me or people I knew were going through. So all of those same problems were the things that people in the book were having, but like the tone was just so different. It was just people like quietly trying to connect amidst their suffering. And like even the people that read it and liked it, they would all be like, "Oh, this was really good. Like it hurt to read." And I'm like, "That's awful to hear. That's terrible." And I only listened to sad music, and I all of a sudden started listening to happy music all the time, and it was like, "Hey, like where have you been? Like backbeats are great." So Demon Chic was very much like I had this sort of aesthetic imprint. I just like was walking to class, and I just had like this sudden memory of a dream that I'd had where there was like a dude in a dress like burning a spider, but it was like he dressed totally different. It was like a very elegant Hollywood dress, and like the cigarette was on one of those long holders, and it was like a giant weird spider. It was sort of different, but like the general aesthetic was there of like weird people in dilapidated houses fighting strange things. So then I was just like, oh, I'll just take this in the book. And that's sort of what I did, is I just like took this really depressing novel about people who have problems, and then like was like, and we'll add fighting and dancing. Like,
it sounds just like a Final Fantasy game. They have problems.
Yeah.
They're young people oftentimes. They're depressed, but they're also getting through things through connecting with each other. And also they have magical powers and are fighting these surreal things that just kind of show up in their lives. So in that way, it is very much a Final Fantasy filtered through your brain. But we still haven't... I want to entice people even harder with the specifics about the things that you did. There's
another thing we tried to do with the story is these characters, a lot of the action is not physically taking place in their bodies in that moment, because it's sort of them dealing with trauma or dealing with memories of things that have happened, or even just struggles that are occurring that moment but are very internal, like things like mental disorders. So to sort of take that not located on the screen action and be able to locate it on the screen, we alternate between the very grounded in reality, which it sounds strange to say when they're fighting these ludicrous creatures, levels, where it's like, it's still like as ludicrous as it is, it's 3 people in a house, and you get the sense of the passage of time. Then we alternate between those and then these very fanciful, the ones where I did the art with the crazy different art styles. And that sort of shows either things that were in the past or just internal dramatizations of their feelings about their place in the world, but done in a very surreal lens. So it's sort of, on the one hand, you're getting a kind of progressive experience of a couple weeks in their life as they're just chilling in their house, but at the same time, this is our chance to vary it up, change styles of gameplay completely. Like, one of them is sort of a very choice-heavy decision game. Another is very not interactive at all, but it's only 30 seconds. And then one is like you walking through a forest. So it just changes. It could be literally anything happening. So we wanted that to sort of replicate the feel of these characters' disordered thoughts, because all of them are in some way hallucinating.
That's right. You've kind of taken characters who are a reflection of people in your life and spun it around so you see their subconscious thoughts as literal and vice versa, which it struck me you were doing too. I couldn't help but guess that a lot of the stuff in the game was intentionally or unintentionally symbolic of your subconscious. So it's your subconscious on screen. Yeah, which is not something. It takes a lot of guts to kind of spill all that out on there. Is that why you didn't base one of the characters on you? Because so much of it is you in the game, but you aren't actually physically represented in the game, at least that I'm aware of.
I feel like the three main characters are sort of like all different aspects of my personality. Like, but it was sort of, as I was writing them, like I sort of separated out which parts of myself I felt like they reflected. But then people got a totally different received image of those people. Like, one of the characters in particular, I was like, that's sort of like the more sensitive, trying to understand other people's side, but also like a little more of the sad, mopey side. And everyone was like, oh, that was the least favorite character. He was such a downer. People really didn't like him. So I was like, oh god, that was the one that was most like me. The other ones are like, what was me if I were a little more exciting? Or like, what was me if I were a little braver or smarter?
And how do the characters all interrelate? They're all aspects of you on some level, but they all they have dynamics of their own. So what are their names? We should tell
one of them is Gary. Gary is the guy in the dress, and he has just come back from a drag party and decides that he really likes how he feels wearing the dress. So he decides to keep it on and just sort of see how he feels about it. And he's the one that's very unsure of his feelings about himself and his place in the world, and just sort of trying to figure himself out, trying to decide if he should be on or off medication for his emotional issues. And at the same time, his boyfriend is Ashok, who's the huskier character, as you said. We thought he was drawn muscular, but I guess that could be husky.
I was told I was husky once by a woman who was suffering from some pretty severe psychiatric symptoms, and she meant it as the most sincere of compliments. I was explaining.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I've always heard husky as like a sort of euphemistic bad thing. Like, I don't know. I've had friends who. What?
For chunky?
Yeah. I've had friends who like really insisted. They're like, husky is okay, but it's not great. Like, it basically means fat, but like at least they're not saying fat. But like, if someone called them husky, they would give them like the side eye. They would be like, I'm not gonna punch you, but like, I'm unhappy. Like,
I've been called husky in terms that were not only complimentary but almost inappropriate. Almost, you should not be hitting on me right now, person. And they're like, you're husky. I like your body. It's husky. I want to grab it. I'm like, okay, let's talk about something else now. But anyway, I'm sorry. I sidelined your conversation.
No, it's fine. I'm just like thinking back to any time I've ever been called a husky, and I'm like, maybe they were flirting with me. But
maybe they were. So Gary's boyfriend is muscular, and where's he coming from in the game?
He's the one that is the sort of least preoccupied with any sort of issue in his life. His biggest issue in life is just that he will eventually have to try to start working to get money to pay for his lifestyle. But for now, he's sort of just coasting after college and really enjoying not having a job. But he doesn't really have any goal in life other than to just sort of chill and be happy. He was a lot like a couple roommates of mine, but they were great people to be around. So I figured like having a character like that in the game would be interesting. But at the same time, like, he's the most masculine, macho, outward character in conventional terms. But he's also very, very open about being bisexual, and that was something that I thought would be sort of hilarious to do in a sense, because my one friend that's like most like him in real life is is politically very liberal, but he's always struggling with his homophobia, and he used to be really homophobic. So it's sort of like, on a certain level, playing a joke on him. Like, I'm going to put you in the game, but I'm going to make you like boys, and it's going to be awesome. But at the same time, it's sort of exploring, I think, a lot of issues of bisexual masculinity that me and a lot of my friends face, where it's like, how do you sort of relate to not fitting with a conventional gender role while at the same time trying to identify with parts of it. So I thought it would be interesting to have a character that encompassed that without necessarily focusing on all of the distress and worrying about fitting in, and just having a character who's really comfortable in his own skin.
It fits a lot of the people I know who are bisexual say they sometimes feel like they're cheating because they can dodge homophobia pretty quickly.
Oh, definitely.
In ways that their friends who are, you know, more leaning towards one particular preference can't. And it's like you say, they can put that on the sidelines if they want to. They can say, well, if I have to, I'll just bring a girl to the prom, and that won't be that bad. And I can kind of dodge that whole bullet. So very... haven't seen that explored in games at all that I've found, anyway. So the fact that you're putting that in there, I think, is a great move, one that I hope people appreciate and absorb and find out about. Because that thing about your game, Demon Chic, people see the videos and they think, that looks like a weird thing. I like a weird thing, but am I going to take a risk on a weird thing? I don't know. Am I going to buy it with my actual dollars? But if they knew, and now they're going to know, about what these characters are going through, I think every man in the world should buy it. Because they're going to relate to it. It's true. They should at least give it a shot, because it's interesting.
As far as the characters' sort of stance on their own gender and sexuality and the way they feel about it and explore it, not being typical for games, I think that's something that, like, I'm totally fine with when it's in an article about us, because for me it's like, that is something that I would be interested in if I heard that, because I think people always want to see some aspect of themselves represented. But at the same time, like, it also makes me equally happy when someone writes an article and that doesn't come up at all, because it is definitely a minority issue, and there's a lot of corresponding negatives that can occur. Like, I was almost attacked at one point while making the game. Just in the street, people just started chasing me, and I got away, so it was fine. But like, now, like, I think twice when I'm leaving the house dressed at all flamboyantly. Like, I really have to stop and think about that, and that's something that really makes me unhappy. But at the same time, like, I don't feel like it's a good thing when all of the media exploring a certain minority issue are presenting it always as fraught with struggle, when that's not the everyday narrative that a lot of people experience. So at the same time, while I wanted these issues to be in the game, I didn't really want those to be the sources of their negativity. Like, all of their problems come from outside that. As far as Gary and Ashok's relationship is, they're comfortable with each other at the beginning of the game. They have little disagreements, but they never, like, full out get in a huge fight and break up, and at the end they're just still in a stable relationship. And I wanted something that was just reflective of life can just be just like chilling at times, but not necessarily make it like fraught with emotional pain. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can only imagine the challenge of knowing that you're representing a huge minority group with your game, one that's hugely unrepresented in games in general. So you're kind of one of the few people who are doing it right now and getting some press for it.
There's a lot. There's not just a few. Like, I don't know.
Tell me more. Yes.
I mean, there's so many like indie games coming out that are really exploring it. The whole Twine revolution. Like, I don't know. I see like new games exploring like queer issues that I want to play and engage with like every week. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So I'm really happy, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm the coolest part of people making queer games or any of that. And I often feel guilty, like my next game isn't really going to have a gay main character. Oh no, like, am I turning my back? You know, it's not like a solidified movement, but at the same time, I feel like this is a game that has queer issues in it, but it's not necessarily even like the best game that does that necessarily. I don't know what that would be. Like, I haven't played all of them. But,
well, that's the thing that I imagine so hard about it, that I was starting to get to, which is that you can't represent all human beings with one game, or even a lifetime of games. You can only represent yourself, and it sounds like you made a conscious decision to make sure that this is a game that the Demon Chic, anyway, is a game that doesn't try to ride on the coattails of an issue or
Mhm.
exploit it in any way. It just is a matter of fact that that's part of who these characters are, and
Mhm.
in a way, hopefully normalizes it and shows people of all preferences and genders and whatnot that it doesn't have to be this kind of barrier issue, that you can relate with a guy in a dress easy and play an awesome game regardless of
Mhm.
what your sexual preferences may be. That's what I took from it anyway. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things I think is wonderful about video games, is that if you come at the game with your insecurities in check, you can play as someone of a different gender and not like get afraid. Like even the most homophobic dudes in the world hopefully can at least play Tomb Raider and not like have a gender dysphoria moment afterwards and like get scared that they don't know who they are anymore. So yeah, that's one of the things you've done with the game. But we haven't talked about the third character yet. I want to
Oh
make sure we
yeah.
get
So the
that.
third character is Devraj, and he's Ashok's little brother that's living with them for some time while he's trying to sort out his whole life and find out what he's going to do for a living, where he's going to stay. And he's sort of in a dark period because he's coming out of a relationship that didn't end the way he'd like, and he really misses the person, and he's struggling with his own emotional issues while at the same time just like the dark cloud of I'm mooching off of my brother and his boyfriend, and I need to get an actual job that's hanging over his head. So bringing back to what you said about games making you sort of be able to identify with or explore other perspectives, I really didn't want this game touching on all of these issues sort of out of necessity, in the sense of like, these are all the things I'm thinking about, so these all ended up in the game. I didn't want it to be like a polemical, here's how I feel about this, here's how I feel about that. So to sort of kind of put a check and balance against that, because there were three characters, part of the reason we ended up splitting it in that manner was we can sort of take like as wide a range of options on any given issue. Like in terms of representation, the racial representation was completely decided after the characters were written, just on which of my friends were willing to be these characters. So I happened to have like two really good close Indian friends at the time. So two of our three main characters were Indian. That was like awesome. But that was never something that we really focused on in the script writing period. But we tried to make it like they talk about religion at points. So we have one character who's really, really devoutly religious, one character who's very hardcore atheist, another who's sort of open to spirituality, not sure how he feels. As far as sexuality, one character is straight, one character is gay, one character is kind of, in retrospect, pansexual, but I hadn't really learned about all of the different terms that were available. So he refers to himself as bi, so I guess that character is bi now instead of pansexual, but that was sort of how he was written. In the sequel, he's learned. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He found his internet community.
And again, I want to applaud you for making these issues intrinsic to the game, and making these ideas, not so much issues, intrinsic to the game without buying into the whole thing that people are defined by their problems and only their problems. All these problems are there for the characters, but what they're going to do with their lives is just as prevalent as anything else in it. They're fully rounded human beings, which is something that you don't always get with the representation of minorities in video games in general. They end up having to take on the token issues for whatever group what the agenda of the creator of the game might have. So let's say you have a agenda of proving, I don't know, some of the bisexual males are just as good at hockey as heterosexual males. So that becomes what your game is all about. And you lose sight of the fact that these are well-rounded three-dimensional human beings. And you did that. You pulled that off. You had the right attitude going into it, and I think it really panned out.
Glad that came across.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think, like, if I were listening to this, I would feel like this game was probably really heavy emotionally. But we tried to make it, like, sort of like spacing out any sort of sad conversation and making them really short. So it's sort of like, as far as it deals with all of these things, like, it really does. We tried to make it feel human. We tried to make it feel lived in, all of that. But at the same time, it's like, you're never going to have, like, more than 5 minutes of kind of bummerness before all of a sudden, like, a barbershop quartet struts in, but it's all the different heads of one dinosaur, like, something like that. Like, because we ended up we structured it this way on purpose. Like, we ended up making a 3-hour game instead of like a 20-hour crazy, however long lots of RPGs are, because like we really feel like there's a lot of competition out there, and we don't want to feel like we're wasting the player's time. Mm-hmm. So it's very much like when something happens, it's not going to happen for too long, and we're trying to move you on to the next thing and just keep changing it. Like, hopefully, like 10 minutes before the ending, you're still seeing things you've never seen before. But,
yeah, you jumped on that right at the time when I think people are starting to embrace that. For so long, video games were valued by like, how many hours do I get per dollar for this? 120 hours for $60? I'm going to buy that over a 40-hour game. But thanks to games like Journey and Walking Dead and a lot of others, smaller games, people have learned, like, I'm going to approach this like I would a YouTube video, and I'm not going to watch a 2-hour YouTube video. I'm going to watch like 20 really good 3-minute YouTube videos, and people are doing that with their games now as well. And if you were to play Demon Chic and then Journey and then Papa and Yo all in a row, you could have an incredible $60 experience, much better than I think you would buying a retail, your average Resident Evil 6 style $60 retail game, which is long, but like you said, not very many surprises are necessarily going to be packed in that length of time. And Demon Chic will continue to surprise you and let you jump around between emotional states. There's a lot of jokes. Yeah. It's a funny game, people should know. At least I thought it was funny.
I don't know. As far as the japery, they're not like joke discreet, like deployable. I don't know. It was more like my mom really, I think, summed it up well for me. Like, so I was like, you didn't like hate it when she was first reading the script bit by bit, and she was like, it's really not funny. Like, I felt really bad when she said that, but she was like, but it has like a nice tone to it where it's like it has a jocular tone. Like, it's not like any one joke you would sit and just laugh at for a while, and the focus isn't really on the jokes as much as like there's a joking tone to it because these people that are hanging out like each other, and like the whole general feel of the game is sort of silly and kind of off-kilter, sort of loopy. So like we just like at times the narrator itself is being crazy, but like it's sort of like it's never like us trying to be like, here's a joke and this scene is going to be so hilarious, as much as just like playing with tone and atmosphere and trying to keep it not just really sad all the time.
Yeah, I take back everything I said about it having jokes. Because
I'm sorry. No, it might really. Like, I don't know. Like, that would be cool, probably.
No, I actually hate jokes. Did you know that about me?
I do know that because I was like panicking about how this whole show setup would work. So I kept checking your Twitter, and you were talking about it like an hour before the show.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
anything
like
you did on Twitter in the hour before the show, I know by heart because I was like scanning for any information.
And that is funny to me, even though that wasn't a joke you just told. That was a truth you told, but the way you told it, the genuine nature in which you just expressed yourself made me laugh. And that's what I meant by saying Demon Chic is funny. You express your genuine nature, and yeah, definitely you do.
I feel like it looks like I'm trying to like get your favor now by also saying that like there aren't any jokes in our game, I swear. But I feel like it's a totally different like construction of what a joke is in each of the discussions. Like I feel like yours was more like a joke as a story you can repeat for a result. Whereas I just meant it as like something that you would like actually tell your friend. Like, they said this in this game and it was hilarious. Like, I don't really think we have that. But like we do have like the moment when you're talking to the whales and you're the little fish and their eyes fall out and then they just start dancing away. Like that for me is like a moment where that to me like feels sort of like a joke. Like it's like a little moment where I just feel like it would be really cool if you were watching like a really boring movie you didn't like. Whenever something happened and it made a character like feel happy, like a little dinosaur man just appeared in the corner and went high five at you, like something like that. Like I just wanted like as much as possible it to feel like our game had a little dude that was going high five to you. Like,
well, the thing about a joke is that it makes some people feel cared about. Like I think the fine line a lot of people walk when they try to create something that values the viewer's time and entertains them is like, do I want to give you something that shows you that I did this for you? I'm not thinking about expressing myself right now. I'm thinking about making you happy and going towards your interests. Or Am I going to not waste your time by not chasing the viewer and instead leading the viewer and being like, this is what I think is worth talking about, this is what I'm going to show you, and going in between that can be tough, and a good, funny thing balances that just right by keeping the surprises happening. And when the eyeballs fall out of the whale's head, that is not a knock-knock joke. That is not a textbook technique to make the viewer laugh, or the worst jokes. You want to know what my favorite jokes to talk about I hate are? Is Eddie Murphy's when you're pooping and you run out of toilet paper jokes. Do you know those jokes?
I don't know those at all.
I'm going to tell you about them briefly.
You're going to tell a joke you hate.
Pretty much.
It's like a unique personal how.
It's because a comedian is desperate to get their audience to feel like, I'm one of you. You could relate with me. I'm thinking the things you're thinking, except I'm saying them in a more clever way than you. Ha. And Eddie Murphy told a joke about, like, when you go into the public bathroom and you run out of toilet paper, and the audience just immediately starts laughing. For unknown, he just said that a thing happens sometimes. Why would you just laugh? That's true. It does happen, Eddie Murphy. And then he's like, and then you take the roll and you peel away the cardboard and you start wiping your butt with it.
I can see how that's like giving someone the feeling of camaraderie.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's such a cheap, it's a breast implant ploy for me. To go for the wiping your butt comedy is really a primitive, not very, there's no ideas for me to chew on, Eddie Murphy. I want to know the real Eddie Murphy, not just the ass-wiping Eddie Murphy. You know what I mean?
Now I feel bad because my game is just people hanging out. It feels like the ass-wiping of games.
It is not at all, because they are, like, if you wanted to make your game like an Eddie Murphy ass-wiping joke, you would have been like, well, there's a cheerleader, and she's not very bright. Her boyfriend, the football player, he loves sports and drinking beers. After it was just been like, you're trying to tell me a story that I already know. You're buying into stereotypes I'm already aware of in order to try to give a false sense of connection and a false sense of charm. But instead, you did some stuff that I don't think anyone else has ever made money off of it before. Maybe Mother 3? I don't know if you played Mother 3, the Game Boy Advance role-playing game.
I have like the heartbreakingest stories with the Mother games. Like, I want to love them, but like they've only ever been on like emulators that other people set up for me. Because I've never owned like a system that would play the game I wanted in the language I wanted. And like I'm really excited for Earthbound to come to Wii U. Like I'm gonna buy that day one. But like I've gotten like a few hours into these several times over. But like I always end up deleting it and destroying my save file, or it gets corrupted, or the person whose computer it's on moves away. Like I've never explored beyond their openings. But their openings are great. Like in Mother 1, when that lamp attacks you, like that's, oh man, that lamp, I didn't see that coming. It's a crazy lamp. But
yeah, I love that lamp.
that lamp is wonderful.
Have you played Mother 3 at all yet?
Just like the very opening.
It's a pretty good
Like,
opening.
that one only got like half an hour in, but it was a good half hour.
That's it's tough because the battle systems are really outdated in those games. So when people play them for the first time now, they're like, there's a lot of grinding, there's a lot of fighting the same mole over again. They can get a little bummed out. But if you're willing to tough it out, I think you'll, especially by the end of Earthbound, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Also fun. Excuse me. It's fun to hear that you didn't even get influenced by those games. Because when I played Demon Chic, I was like, this is what I would want Mother 4 to be aimed towards, but it sounds like those games weren't even a direct influence. What were? I think I might have asked before, but I'll ask again just to be sure. Were there any games in particular that made you think, I can take these narratives that come naturally to me and apply it to the game? Yeah?
Really would be like the No More Heroes games. Those were the biggest ones for me. Like I've often admired Killer 7 from afar. I've tried it, and it stresses me out so much. I don't know why. I don't even die in that game, but it's just like every passing second feels awful. I just get so anxious, and like I like put it down, and I'm like, I'll finish this when my heart can take it. But like those were the No More Hero games where I feel like, for me, it's like they actually feel fun to play, and like the aesthetic is so over the top. I love the aesthetic. So those were the games that I was probably playing like a little too much when I should have been starting to write the Demon Chic script. So
both No More Heroes 1 and 2?
Yeah, I played those like as soon as I finished the first one. I was like, ordering the second one frantically off of Amazon.
The second one, though a lot of fans of the original one were disappointed by it. Do you have any particular preference between the two of them?
I think it's one of those things where he wasn't trying to make a sequel that would have like the same flavor. It definitely has a very different flavor. And because I couldn't play games like as a kid, I didn't have access. Like I don't have any nostalgia for really old arcade games. So all those sections were lost on me. Like I love the comedy jobs in the first one that he replaced with those coin games. But like when he replaced them, I was like, this is probably awesome if you grew up with these. Like, but I felt like it was not for me. But the rest of it was great. Like I loved all of the bosses. Like that girl with the flute, she was great.
Oh yeah, Kimmy Howell. I love her a lot.
Yeah, I think I got a lot better with Atmosphere. Like you just felt like he was so good at doing the atmosphere. But the whole mood and pacing were very different. So I could see it like alienating you if that was what was the big draw for you. But for me, like every part of the first one almost drew me in. So like when only half of them were the same, I'm like, that's cool. These new things are great too. Like,
that's awesome. I'll when I see Suda51 next, I will tell him you said so.
One day I'll meet him. He's like my game design hero. I always make people play his games, but like people like I always forget like the order of what I tell people about things. So like I'm always sitting down to like make people play No More Heroes. And I'm like getting them all psyched up. I'm like, it's awesome. It opens with him just chopping off 4 dudes' heads, but it's not like sad gore. It's like fun gore. And then like they're always really into it until as I'm handing them the Wii remote, I'm like, and it's hilarious. You have to like jack off the Wii remote to power his sword. And then their face just like falls, and they're like, I feel uncomfortable playing this now. Like, yeah.
That's pretty hilarious. And Suda51, when I've talked to him anyway, he's completely unaware. He's like, oh yeah, people might think that's strange. Like to him, it's just totally all of these ideas.
I felt like the No More Heroes, like for me to interpret the story in a way I was really happy with. Like at first I was sort of confused by a lot of things, but when it sort of clicked and I had my understanding that I loved, I don't know if it's what he meant. Like for me, the whole game felt like it was about his idea of his own masculinity, like Travis Touchdown. So like it seemed perfect for me. It in large part like inspired the whole level about erectile dysfunction in Demon Chic. But yeah,
I can't wait to tell him that when I say
Suda. There's a whole level. There's like these stone people with little saplings that turn into giant trees. It's awesome.
Indeed, it absolutely is, and I think you're right on the money. Last time I talked with Suda, I said, seems like your characters are evolutions of your own self-portrait. And Travis is where you were at when you were like this young new guy on the scene. You were just getting your name out there, but you were kind of rough around the edges. And then he made Lollipop Chainsaw when he was kind of reaching this weird stardom moment in his career where the WB was backing him. He was like a name that was used to advertise games. Same with Shout Out to the Damned. His name was like written all over the publicity for that. He became like this weird rock star. And now with Killer is Dead, he's I don't know if you've seen much about that game.
I'm really excited.
Yeah?
It's going to be great.
I think you're going to get a big kick out of it. It's I found out he didn't actually direct it. He's just the supervisor of it.
Because that's how it's been for a few games, I thought.
That's right. But he blurs the line a whole lot between director and supervisor. He's almost like
Kanye West as a producer. Like he's like he oversees and he's like the aesthetic definer.
That's absolutely right. One thing I wanted to ask, were you at all tempted to go the very simple route in terms of gameplay when you started Demon Chic, as opposed to what you went with, which is something that took familiar aspects but also went a different path with them? A lot of times people just start with a puzzle game or a platformer or something, but you didn't go for that. Was that something you were tempted to do, to kind of play it safer at first, or did you know right from the start that you wanted to dive into something turn-based RPG-ish?
I really didn't know that much about RPGs, like nearly as much as I should, because I was one of those horrible people that only really plays Final Fantasy. And since then, I've really branched out, and it's awesome. Like Persona games are amongst my favorite ever, and all these other series that I would never have tried before. But at the time, like I really hadn't played any of those other games, and I didn't really know how to make turn-based battling interesting and all different. Like I was sort of hitting this point where I didn't really like playing turn-based games. So all the ones I'd played were like you just attack until you need to heal and like save your mana for the boss. But then I found there are all these games that don't do that, and that's awesome. And now I'm like brimming with turn-based ideas. But at the time I was like, we have to make it an action RPG, so I know how to make it different at all. And then our first idea for gameplay was not going to be actually like as much of an action RPG. It was going to be like you found the letters in the environment. They would be like sort of fantastical architecture. And like you would have to slowly collect letters and you use them to form things, and then like once you cross the bridge you could turn it back into the letters if you needed those letters to form other things. But when I started plotting it out, it's like it's impossible to design these puzzles just around like English vocabulary and have you be limited to like the words that make sense, and like it was just a design nightmare. But then when I thought about this battle system where you're picking different letters that appear at different frequencies to make different spells, I realized like the set of spell words we had were pretty incestuous with like all using the same letters, and like it just really worked out. So then I was like, let's do that. But as far as like going ambitious with all the level of like crazy things flying around the screen, it's like I asked my mom, I was like, what can and we can't do technologically? Because I didn't know about any of that. And she'd only really worked on business programs. She'd never done like a crazy intense like lots of stuff happening game. So she was like, we can do anything. She was just, there are no limits. So that's why it's constantly just giant images moving around the screen. And instantly we ran into memory problems. So then we sort of had to figure out how to make everything work. But it was really like, I decided since sky is the limit because we're 2D. That's what she said. She was like, as long as we're 2D. I don't know how to do 3D. I don't know either. Like, so we decided to go just like as much as we could maximally with 2D. But what I'm really excited about for our second game is now I ended up having to help her with some of the scripting. So I've looked around in our code and she's teaching me as we go along. So now I know exactly what we can and can't do on a technological level. And it's like, if I'd known that going into Demon Chic, I could have made it so much easier for us. I could have just designed a satisfying system that didn't use every possible thing that would be hard. But now I know, so.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's hard. As you get better, you always want to go back and be able to redo the things that aren't perfect. But unfortunately, that's how progress works. And people should know that if you love word search, it's another bullet point I would recommend you use in the future.
That's what I thought was really interesting. Is when I was first making it, I thought that it would be more about rationing your letters, like trying to make sure you had the right letters on screen and didn't waste them. But in like every possible algorithm we tested for generating a small clump of letters that would then shoot around really fast, it was like you were always so starved for letters that it wasn't fun. It was just so much using the junk attack waiting for a real spell word. Or there was like that really thin tipping point. All of a sudden you didn't feel like you had to ration. And it didn't feel like a fair, like, the whole, like, I think it's the same way with pricing a game, is it's not about what is or isn't fair, it's about creating the perception of fairness in the player. Like, I think Crisis Core, the prequel to Final Fantasy VII, like, it had a really awesome battle system in a lot of ways, but people were furious that your leveling was based on a slot machine. And then in interviews later, they were like, of course it's not actually random, we keep track of your leveling and have the slot machine give you that result when you would have leveled up anyway. But just like how it's presented to the player really changes their feeling on it. So we decided like the limiting feeling, people were just really unhappy. So then when we just opened up the floodgate and had a ton of letters, then it became really fun because you're trying to make spells as fast as possible. Sometimes you run out of the spell you like and it makes you switch up your battle tactic. But at the same time, you always have options and it becomes way less about conserving resources and more about like the word search aspect. It wasn't until we'd done that, though, and actually put it in that I was playing it, and I was like, this feels like it uses the word search muscles in your brain. Like, it does feel like, where is the, like, yeah.
And I think it's a brilliant, yeah, absolutely. Well, you were very apt to do it. It makes me, I don't know if you've played Super Flirt Off. If not, I'll send you a link.
No.
It's a neat
I'd
game.
like to check it out.
Yeah, we've had the guys on the show who made it in the past. Diego is his first name. It is a metaphor for searching for the right words to flirt with someone at a party. But in most games, you would just choose, some sentences. In this, you have to build every sentence from each word, and the words are scattered around the screen, and you have to think really fast because there's a timer ticking down as the other person is staring at you like, what are you trying to say? And if you're lucky, you can spell like, did you see that Batman movie in time? And you're like, that's boring. Why do you want to talk about Batman? But it's better than saying like, you got nice shoes, which is how it can go when you
That
fail
sounds like
a
a
game.
cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool,
Yeah.
but it's like your game, it makes you feel like you're exercising the muscles that have to decide what you're going to say to somebody. And though you're not saying anything other than fire and ice in your game a lot of the time, it still brings out that part of the brain where you feel like you're having to win a conversation against. And that, to me, turn-based battles are oftentimes, they feel like a metaphor for a conversation where you're trying to like say the right thing to the person.
I can see that.
And your
That's
game did that
interesting.
very well.
I've never thought of it that way, but that's a cool way
Oh,
to
thanks.
think about it.
That's nice to say. Well, how long have we been talking? This has been whizzing by. I haven't even kept track. Can I see? Whoa, we only have 19 minutes left in the show. I don't know. People were surprised that we were doing this show, so I don't know if anyone's got any questions. No questions as of yet, so we can just keep talking.
Oh, okay. Cool.
You don't mind? Is that okay with you?
No, that's totally fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
fun.
I felt really bad for you because I used to interview people at a different job, and I hated coming up with the questions. That was the worst part. And I know you usually get questions, and since it was so last minute, I was like, he's gonna have to come up with all the questions. That's awful.
That's so nice of you. I normally don't. I think about it. I rehearse in my mind what I'm hoping we talk about, but I don't really remember. And when I start going, I just kind of hope for the best. So when can we expect your next game to come out, you think?
Hopefully this fall, but like this is the week that we're really setting a lot of the script things in stone. And we've started scoping up, which is the horrible thing you always do when you're coming up with ideas. Like, if you have an idea to have, like, a pair of crystal lions guarding a bank vault, like, you want to put it in. You don't want to be like, no crystal lions at this bank. But then you're like, that's concretely going to be at least 3 days added on. Like, so it might get pushed back to the winter, but hopefully the fall. And I think that would be really, like, it would make me laugh, which makes me happy, because that's also when we're done porting Demon Chic prospectively to PC and Mac and everything else that we can. So that, I think, would be really funny because a lot of people haven't been able to play the first one because a lot of journalists we've talked to even are like, oh, let me know when it's out for PC. And, like, we're gonna, but it's gonna be, like, such, I think, an asshole move to be like, and we have 2 of them! Like, we're gonna be twice as annoying.
Well, is your new game going to be coming to iPad solely, or is it going to be PC, or is it going to be
It'll
both?
be everything at once, because we're using the ported code engine to power our second game. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's why they're sort of going to be done at the same time, ideally. So it's like once we finish one, we'll just have them both ready to go. But it's gonna be so much more like fancy visuals. We're getting a lot better now that I know like more about how animation works. So we're trying to make it look like we had more of a budget. We're very excited. It's gonna be our big like epic sci-fi game, but at the same time, it's still like really trippy and cast with a lot of my friends. Some of the same actors are coming back, so I think it has that interesting effect of no one could really spend anything on any sets or costumes, but we're actually going to build little sets for this. There's going to be architecture. Like.
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds very exciting and very much. I can imagine playing your new game. I might want to see what those actors had done previously, and I'd want to see what the designer had done previously, and then right there they'll have the opportunity to hop back on PC and buy Demon Chic on PC if they don't have an iPad. Any thought of consoles? Would you want to do consoles? Is it not in your scope, or is it not something you're interested in?
We'd love to do consoles, like particularly either of the handhelds. Like Vita is just, I love Vita so much. It's just so beautiful. And like I also am a huge fan of 3D. Like everyone hates it. All my friends think I have terrible taste, but I'll watch anything 3D or play anything 3D. So
it's weird how 3D has a stigma to it now. I think it's because it's been attached to so many substandard movies. Like Wrath of the Titans 3D and whatnot. People just.
I think it's also very different for games, because I wasn't a huge fan when movies first started being 3D, because I think you also have to factor it in when you're making the thing. Like, if you have a ton of fast cuts in an action scene, that's awesome. I mean, that's awful, because your eyes have to keep reorienting, versus like really large landscape shots with interesting like crenellations and stuff, like crenellations. Sorry, that's like really awesome, because then it like you get to like sort of recognize and have the seconds you need to like parse it as a 3D shape and then appreciate it. So it's like there's different considerations that need to be taken and all of that. But games, just their default camera angle is so often like a sustained shot showing something at an angle. Like, it really naturally translates, and it's the whole experience of like, this is an explorable space. Like,
Yeah, I've said it a few times, but I'll say it again. My favorite games on the 3DS that use 3D just give it that diorama effect. Like, it makes me feel like a flat object. It is flat, but behind it there are some scopes, so it makes me feel subconsciously like I'm in a real place. So even just like VVVVVVV or Cave Story, they just like gave it more life, and I can see your game.
That's how like I think Demon Chic would be great, because it has a. Also, like, there's a developer that I met at a couple conferences who her game came out at like the same time. Deirdre Kiai, she made Dominique Pamplemousse. It's like this really awesome claymation game. It's like one of my favorite indie games that came out this year. It's really neat. It's a musical. She voices like all the characters, and I thought it was really neat because we developed these totally independently, but they both use the same perspective. And Luigi's Mansion does the same thing, where it's like you're looking into a little room. And that really worked well for it in 3D. Like, I thought that would be great for Demon Chic, but we just didn't even contact Nintendo, because we like don't have money for dev kits. We're like, someday we'll try to go on consoles and stuff, but like for now we'll like wait until we do sort of well enough where they would care. It's like then we can hopefully support all of that. But,
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
And something I'm not supposed to say about Nintendo, so I won't. But I will instead say, I've heard rumors that sometimes Nintendo just gives out 3DS dev kits. They don't. The rumor is they wouldn't want everybody to know that, because then certain developers are going to get insulted when they don't get a free dev kit.
Oh,
But,
I mean, we've heard all of these different rumors. There's always like those rumors, that rumors, but it's also like I feel like if they were to do that, we would not be the ones, because when I was talking to their representative people at the GDC booth, I was like, so what's like Nintendo's content policy? Because our game kind of pushes a lot of those different envelopes. Like there's sort of like someone breaking a law in like every scene, basically. And they were like, oh, like we do it case by case, but like generally like less law breaking will probably help you a little more than like more law breaking. Like, I don't know. I feel like if they worked with us, we would sort of be like the like cousin that comes to visit, and you're not totally happy he's on your couch. Like, I don't know.
I feel like their stance is forever evolving, from what I talk to them anyway. They see Sony reaching out to all these indie developers, and they don't want to be left behind. So they've, over just the past 6 months, I've seen them change a lot, and you may be surprised. I will put you in touch with them just in case, if you want.
Okay,
and
I'm sure. Like we'd always love to go on consoles, but just it seems very secretive to me. Like I don't know how all of that works.
It's they're opening up as much as they can, and Sony as well. I can give you the Sony guys' contact after the show's over.
Oh, cool, sure.
It'd be fun. Questions did happen, so just in case.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, just a couple, which is very nice of you guys. I appreciate you reaching out. Forward Resent, maybe, asks, are you aware of Ananthropy in her games?
I am. I hadn't played them because I hadn't really heard about them until very recently. So I've probably only done the very tip of all of the games that she's made. Like I don't know that many, but the ones that I've played have just like floored me. She's such an amazing writer. So
yeah, she's.
After I played.
Go ahead.
Oh, after I played the first game of hers that I wrote, I was at GDC that year, and I saw her like on an escalator. She was like 10 feet away. She had all these other fan people around her. I was like, I'm not gonna bother her. That was my I'm not talking to Ananthropy because I'm afraid moment. But not like she's intimidating. Just like anytime you meet someone that makes awesome stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Her games are great. Everyone should play all of them.
I'm sure she'll be happy to hear that. She's an interesting character in the game development world because the people who don't know who she is are completely removed, and the people who do know who she is revere her as this kind of what's the right word for it? I don't want to say goddess, but pretty darn close. The people that revere her follow her words on things as almost gospel, and as they should, because she's paving a way for people who felt blocked from the industry before to kind of infiltrate and reshape it from the inside out. And
I definitely feel like I would have heard of her and respected her if she never made a game just for her book, The Rise of the Zensters, all of the work she's done with kind of like formalizing the whole Twine community with a ton of other people, which is awesome. Like, so I think it's really awesome when someone can organize the community to a point when like that would be enough for them to have a significant reputation and still be an artist. Like,
sure. Yeah,
I'm not a part of any community. Like, I just am just here doing things. So like, it's neat. I love the idea of community. I wish there were a ton of game developers in Providence.
Oh, is that where you're at? I should have asked. Yeah, well, I'm imagining as Demon Chic gains visibility, you're going to be absorbed into a variety of communities, whether you like it or not, and you're going to be having people emailing you and tweeting you, asking you how you did it, because it is.
Hopefully.
I'm pretty darn confident of it myself. Bob the Cat Lowell asks, and speaking of which, here's a question for you of just that nature. Bob the Cat Lowell asks, what's the one tip you would give yourself at the start now that you've made your game? So if you could look back and tell little Michael something that big Michael now knows, what would you say to little Michael?
I think that it's really important just to know what your goal is, like what you're trying to create from the start, so that you can sort of, as things happen that are unexpected, you can consider whether or not they fit with what you're trying to make and sort of roll with the flow. As long as you can keep that overriding thing in mind, that's the most important. And I think part of that is to have people play it as quickly as possible. So that was something we definitely didn't do. We had people play it like way too late in the process because of how we were putting everything together as our first game. And like, I had that moment where I was like, I could spend like 2 more years and really make the battle system perfect, or like I could make it really, really good and then make like 2 more games in those 2 years. So it's sort of the earlier you give yourself a chance to change things, the less things will be set in stone. The better the end product will be.
And how was the whole, I didn't ask, now that you've done it, now that you've taken a game from inception to 2 years of development to then release, what do you make of the whole emotional process that goes into creating a video game? Is it worth all of the stress and fear and guilt that goes along with it, or is it something you don't see yourself being able to sustain if the process is this difficult moving forward?
I think it's definitely uniquely pressurizing as a life situation. Like, it gives you a bunch of different experiences that seem very apart from the norm, and you wouldn't expect that to be something that could be so universally conveyed. But like, as we were all starting to feel like working on the game was a major, major stressor in our lives, then we watched the documentary, the indie game, the movie, and like, it's so like, if I'd never made a game, I would think that movie was so melodramatic about all these things, like the scenes of people like crying in their bathtub and like all of that. But it's like, you are there, and it's because of it's like a system that structures you in a certain way where it's like, you only are going to get any money when this thing is done, and this thing is so big it's going to take months and months probably, unless if it's like a 2-week project, hopefully you won't be in this very dark place. But if it's like the long one, then it's like this huge thing. So you sort of have this like riding guilt of just any minute that you don't spend working on it is just a minute you're literally putting like your life on hold, because you start planning for like, when this comes out, hopefully I'll be able to afford a little more of this or blah 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 that, or like eat better food or something.
Yeah, it's a process where, from what I've been told anyway, you are so starved at times for relief and emotional rejuvenation, so you can put that back into your game. But when you go to seek those moments, you can't tell, like, is this a guilty pleasure? Should I feel bad that I'm watching Maury Povich right now? Or is this me refueling in order to make more Demon Chic? And you have to get to know yourself in that process in a way that hopefully will make the next game easier, and the more you know yourself and the styles that you... And you're already almost done with the next game? That's incredible. How long have you been working on it for?
Oh, not like almost done. Just since a lot of the code is set up, it should just take a lot shorter. So we only really have like the art and the music to do for it.
Huh.
So
That's
yeah,
great.
we just started. We have like all of our initial sketching done for a lot of the characters, and we figured out what they're gonna look like. We're building the sets now, so it's exciting. My mom was so happy. She was overjoyed because like I was asking her, I was like, can we find space like in your basement and build these little cardboard rooms? Like we just need the geometry so I can get the perspective when I'm rotoscoping. Then she was like, Michael, we will go all out. And I didn't realize like her dream was to be a museum diorama maker. So like she's like, I know how to make polymer clay look like metal or rock or glass. And she was like, so she's so happy. She's gonna make clothes for the little character models. It's gonna be I think like at least like if I'm bankrupting my parents with like really like uncommercial art, at least like I want them to have some fun, hopefully, while I do that. So I'm really happy that she's excited about the doll making, set building.
That is so great. What do you think? Because it sounds like you and your mom balance each other out in some ways. You have traits that she feels like she needs that she doesn't bring to the table necessarily that you have, and likewise she has traits that you need her help with in order to make a more finished product. So how did you, and just collaborating with your mom in general is a pretty amazing thing that not a lot of 23-year-old people would even think of doing in the first place. But you speak with her with such affection. I don't get one hint of like 23-year-old male rebellion in you. You're just like, me and my mom are making dioramas. It's badass.
Yeah.
Making them look like metal. So tell me about that relationship and how you think it works.
I get along well with my parents. Like every relationship has its ups and downs, but I was getting along with them pretty well when we started. So I'm glad that it's remained. I totally forgot to plug in my laptop, but the plug's right over here. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be gone for long. Oh wow, that was painful because I didn't even take out the earbuds.
Oh no,
yeah, but it's actually I think really helped our relationship because we sort of start the workday, so she knows I'm like awake, and she's getting an actual employee because we're telecommuting for the whole development process. So we call each other like in the morning every day and do like our mother-son, how are you doing talk, and then also like here's what we're doing for work today. I'll be working on this, you code that, and then so the fact that we're constantly in touch about work is I think a positive. The biggest negative would probably be when we do visit each other. It can often be like an overwhelming pressure to work if the other person's working at that moment. So we always have to be like, don't stress yourself. You worked a full day today. But generally, we're always trying to get each other to work a little less and then both working crazy overtime. So.
Huh, that's great. So you meet each other's level in terms of work ethic. And it sounds like you can look at her now as like, well, I'm your son, but I'm also like your peer. You're the head of the company, but I am not just going to like clean my room because you told me to. I'm going to bring stuff to the table, and you're going to be like, that's so great that you, as an adult, have this creative vision that I'm going to help push forward. That sounds fantastic. Do you think she looks to you for the creative side and is excited about your ideas that she might not be that might not be her strength?
She definitely is now. For the first game, she was tentatively excited, but a little worried. But that's something that I think I'm definitely feeling now as I send her the script, because it's the first game didn't really have much branching to the narrative at all. There's one major branch, and like it's very late in the game. But this game is going to be like constantly choosing everything you say in a conversation. So she's getting it all out of order with instructions for like, this is hour 3, part 2. So she has no idea, I think, what a lot of the game is going to be about. And I'm constantly telling her, like, there's going to be a pigeon that rides a giant cockroach the size of a car. And then she's like, I don't know how this is going to fit. But she says that because of how the first game turned out, like, she has this more implicit trust now. That it'll come out, it'll be an art, like, at the end. But, yeah.
And that's largely because the critical reception was very good of Demon Chic, and as it should be.
So
Yeah, and it'll continue to be, I'm sure.
If other people play it, though, you could get the haters. You never know when they're going to come out of the woodwork, you know?
If it gets if it gets too big and people feel threatened by it, like my favorite game didn't win an award this year, but Demon Chic did. I'm all mad about it. Then sure,
That would
you'll
be
get
awesome. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. Sometimes being seen as a menace is the best form of flattery. It's a sign of success every once in a while.
But this conversation started with, like, right now, no one views you as a menace.
For now.
But
now that I know your new plans, your new game is going to scare the crap out of people. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to play it. But I think we're about out of time. Rats, are we?
Cool.
I can't see my clock today. I keep showing on my bald head. We're over time. I apologize.
Oh, no.
Michael, where can people find you on the internet?
If you go to demonchic.com right now, that's our website. We also have like a Bandcamp that's really long, demonchics. It's linked from a bunch of things. So like if you find one of these things, they'll all sort of connect. We have a development blog that only has one post, but like I really promise it's gonna be a thing. If there's an RSS, like you can just forget about it and it'll come to life. It's just every time I try to write a blog post, it's like, I could be working on the game, like that whole. Yeah.
That's how the developer of Smash Brothers feels. He feels very guilty.
Yeah, that mega blog. It was like every day for Brawl.
Yeah.
That was when I was following that blog like every single day.
That's how I got.
Oh, that was the first year of college. So that was like right when I was first ever drinking ever. So I would just get really massively confused, and I would be checking it like 1 in the morning, and forget that I'd checked at midnight, and they'd be like, Sakurai, like where is it?
Oh, that's an experience I think a lot of people can relate with. And they can follow you on Twitter. You're at at Michael
at M Frauenhofer. It's an awful thing to spell. It's terrible. But my name will probably be somewhere connected to whatever you're watching. So that has the spelling.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah. Demonchic.com is like our website thing.
Yeah, they can find all the links there. Mm-hmm. As for me, I'm at TronNauts on Twitter. You can watch reruns of the show on You can watch reruns of the show on Destructoid.com. No, you can't. I rerun them once a week, but if you want to see all the old shows, Dtoid TV on YouTube, and you can listen to the show on iTunes. Just look up Sub Holmes. And I did a cartoon called Teenage Pokemon. There's a new episode on Machinima. It is about going to therapy. Pikachu goes to therapy, and then another Pokemon talks to his friend, the Pokemon, about how he just became a brony. And that is a thing that people are really mad about already. So, oops. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Say goodbye to all the people, Michael.
Bye, all the people. You were really cool.